Thank you. I call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and it is with great sadness that I deliver this condolence motion for Simon Crean, who was the first person I voted for in any election and my first boss in politics. I'm thinking of his wife Carol, daughters Emma and Sarah, his brother David, and the extended Crean family at this time, and also all who knew and loved Simon. He will be terribly missed as both a giant of the Labor movement and as a good man, a decent human being who has left an incredible legacy for this nation, a country he loved dearly. He will be deeply mourned, but always remembered for the positive change he made to Australia, the lives transformed for the better during his life of service. When Simon entered the Parliament in 1990, he was already an incredibly important national figure through his work in the Labor movement and his role in significant industrial relations reforms. Simon entered the ministry immediately. Unusual indeed, but fitting that someone of his proven talents was able to serve the Labor government as a minister so early in his parliamentary career. In many ways, Simon's parliamentary career was not typical. Simon gave many speeches to Parliament before he issued his address in reply speech, finding himself, and I quote, in an unusual position today in seeking the indulgence of the House to make a speech in accordance with the conventions attached to a maiden speech, having previously made a number of other speeches in the House associated with my ministerial responsibilities. In that maiden speech, Simon said that a strong, proactive and independent trade union movement is a bellwether of a strong democracy. And this is, of course, something that remains the case today. Simon's strong association with the union movement began through the Storeman and Packers Union, which then became the National Union of Workers and is now the United Workers Union. The latter two unions, ones which I also had the opportunity to work for. Simon's contributions were legendary in the union. The fight to win superannuation for warehouse workers, to fight for women workers, were visionary and demonstrated Simon's deep dedication to social justice and improving the lives of all Australians, especially those who lived in the margins or were overlooked. At the United Workers Union office in the Docklands in Melbourne, there is a small historical display. Of course, Simon features heavily in this. His photos and campaigns sit in glass cases. These are positioned just outside the training rooms, and thousands of union delegates and members have viewed these over the years and been encouraged by the struggles and sacrifices of the generations of unionists who have come before them. Simon, a significant figure among them. Simon's legacy in the union is also remembered in more quotidian ways. Of all the items on display, my favourite is a typed memo from Mary Landau to Simon Crean, sent on the 16th of July 1975. It reads, "Where's the sandwich toaster?" Simon proved to be visionary in so many ways. In his first speech, he clearly articulated the need to invest in environmental protection, to invest in technology and science, so they could play a role in a sustainable future for our nation. This was over 30 years ago, and his words are as relevant now as they were then. He could see where the future might take us, and, as always, was able to join the dots to tackle the challenge that was presented to the nation. As well as being a leader of the trade union movement in Australia through his role as president of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, Simon, of course, ascended to the leadership of the Australian Labor Party and distinguished himself at the time as courageous and compassionate when he spoke out against the Iraq War, against then Prime Minister Howard's decision, whilst still supporting our troops and their bravery and sacrifice. I will never forget watching Simon's speech in the House of Representatives when George W. Bush visited Australia and he told the President of the United States of America he disagreed with the war. It showed his character, unflinching, principled, with ideas deeply considered. I have no doubt at all that I would not be standing in this House today if it weren't for Simon Crean. Deputy Speaker, over 10 years ago now, I was at a crossroads in my life. I was on the path to an academic career, something I'd worked hard towards, living and working in Sydney, away from my family. I enjoyed my job, but was contemplating a way to combine my love of ideas and research with work that might make a different sort of impact in a different way. A friend let me know that Simon was looking for someone to work for him. He'd be up in Sydney and wondered would I like to meet up with him and have a chat. I said yes. I remember that day, and I remember being so nervous to meet the politician for who most of my childhood had been my local MP. I remember how proud the local community was when our representative, the member for Hotham, became the leader of the Labor Party. Simon was a significant figure, and even though I was so anxious on my way to meet him, I got off at the wrong bus stop on a route I knew well and had to run the last 500 metres to make the meeting on time. Simon put me at ease immediately and offered me a job on the spot, and this set a new path for me in my life. That was in 2013, and I started in a week in March here in Canberra at a time that was particularly difficult for the government and for Simon. But Simon ultimately did not let the turmoil of that period get in the way of championing the issues he cared about: the regions, the arts, industry policy, trade, opportunity and prosperity for all in Australia. Simon was unrelenting and fierce, kind, thoughtful. He could weather the political storms, the highs and the lows inevitable in this life, with good humour and a steely focus on outcomes that would be good for our country. Simon was not easily driven to distraction and had the remarkable ability to see both the big picture and all the fine details. He always believed working people deserved bread and roses. Bread, fair wages, decent conditions and good jobs, with a secure safety net. Roses, arts, time for creative pursuits, to learn, the opportunity to enjoy and share in the many cultures that make our community so vibrant. This was reflected in the cultural policy he launched 10 years ago. Simon's wife, Carol, noted at his funeral that he would want Australia to vote yes for the voice. Simon was always a staunch advocate for reconciliation and First Peoples' rights. The cultural policy he oversaw in 2013 placed First Nations people at the heart of the government's work. Simon was a remarkable person who served with distinction and integrity. He was a generous boss who took the time to develop my interests and support me in my own career, first in the trade union movement and then here in Parliament. Simon's seat of Hotham joins Chisholm, and the boundary movements over the years have meant we have shared representation of many of the wonderful communities in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, a place he loved. Simon was Deputy Chancellor of Monash University, the place he studied as an undergraduate, and was engaged in so many important local initiatives and advocacy, including in technology, manufacturing and infrastructure for the area. I was so grateful for all of Simon's support and his advice throughout my election campaign, and once I made it to this place, is advice I will cherish forever. I last spoke to Simon a few months ago. He gave me good guidance as always. I'll miss Simon. I know this is a sentiment shared with so many. Simon's family were the most important people in the world to him, and again my condolences are with Carol, Emma, Sarah, David, and all those close to Simon at this painful time. Vale, Simon, and thank you for everything.